Okay, so Europe. Right. We're going deep today.
Deeper than a baguette in a breadbasket.
Exactly. And get this, you know those notes you sent over about all those, like, Europe is this and Europe is that kind of things?
Those assumptions.
Yeah, those, well, we're tackling them head on, like Europe, a beacon of equality, for example. Is it, though? Really?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? It's kind of like you see a shiny car in a showroom, right? Looks amazing.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But
Pristine.
then you pop the hood and, oh boy, could be a whole different story under there. Same with Europe, you know? Gotta look past the polished exterior.
Yeah, I'm with you. So are we saying Europe isn't about equality at all, then?
Not saying that. No, no. They've made progress, for sure. But to call it a beacon, that's where things get tricky.
Why that?
Well, look at the numbers. Wealth distribution, for instance. Top 1% of Europeans. They hold over 37% of the continent's entire wealth.
Whoa, hold on. 37%. That's
Yeah.
a lot. Like, really a lot.
Right. Not exactly screaming equality when you put that way.
Yeah. No, not really. And I guess, thinking about it, Europe has a pretty complex history too, right? Doesn't that play into it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we can't just gloss over colonialism, can we? The impact of that, the exploitation, it echoes even today.
Yeah, true. Resources, people. Whole continents for impact.
And the ripple effects are still felt, both within Europe itself and globally. It's all connected.
So even if there's been progress, like you said, there were still these deeper issues at play.
Exactly. You know, we hear about social safety nets in Europe, and they're admirable in many ways, but systemic racism, it's still very real.
You're right, yeah. I mean, discrimination,
Mm.
it doesn't just vanish overnight.
Right. Housing, jobs, even healthcare.
Yeah.
These inequalities persist.
Man, okay, so it's like
Yeah.
Europe's got this image, but the reality is a lot more textured.
That's a good word for it. It's like a tapestry, right? Some threads are bright and strong, others, well, they're a bit faded, maybe even torn.
Makes sense. And speaking of things that might be a bit torn, the myth of the united Europe, right? That was another one you flagged.
Ah, yes, the grand dream. But is it really that united?
Especially after Brexit, right?
Yeah.
Kind of felt like a crack in the whole foundation.
A big one, yeah. And it makes you wonder, was that unity ever truly there? Or was it more of a, I don't know, an aspiration, a hope? Tricky question. I mean, the European project, the EU, it has achieved a lot. We can't deny that.
For sure, yeah.
But Brexit exposed the fault lines, didn't it? The economic disparities between member states, for one, that can breed resentment, instability. It's tough.
True, true. And then you've got the rise of nationalism in many countries.
Yeah, that's a big one. Tied into anxieties about immigration, cultural shifts, all feeding into this pull away from a shared European identity.
It's almost like a tug of war, right? You've got this desire for unity, for collaboration.
But then, bam, national interests come in swing. And it's not just politics, you know? It's economics, culture, values.
A whole shebang, which actually makes me think about this whole idea of romanticizing European history, right? Another point from your notes.
Ah, yes. We all love a good fairy tale.
Right. Knights and castles, Renaissance artists, the Enlightenment, all that. But it sounds like you're saying there's more to it than meets the eye.
Always. Take the Renaissance. Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
Amazing, sure.
Oh, yeah. Incredible.
But meanwhile, over 90% of Rome's population was living in poverty. So not exactly a golden age for everyone.
Wow. Yeah. That puts things in perspective. It's easy to focus on the achievements, but the social realities were different.
Very different. And even the Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason and liberty, well, it wasn't exactly applied universally, was it?
What do you mean?
Slavery, for example, continued right through the Enlightenment, kind of throws a wrench into the whole age of reason thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Okay, so basically what we're seeing here is history is complicated.
That's the one constant, I think. There's always more to the story. More layers, more contradictions.
Makes sense. And speaking of complicated stories, we've got a few more lies to untangle here, like the Green Europe lie, for example.
Oh, yeah, the environmental champion narrative. Europe IS making efforts, but it's not always as green as it seems.
Really? How so?
Well, take biomass energy. Touted as a sustainable alternative, right?
Yeah, I've heard that.
But some places, it's actually led to deforestation. So is it really that sustainable in the long run? Debatable.
Wow, that's not what you'd expect. So even when intentions are good, there could be these unintended consequences.
All the time. It's a complex ecosystem, no pun intended. And then there's the whole Europe and immigration myth thing.
Right, immigration. That's a hot topic everywhere, it seems.
Definitely. And in Europe, it's often framed in a very negative light, draining resources, threatening identities.
Yeah, that kind of rhetoric. But that's not the whole story, is it?
Nope. I mean, many European countries are facing labor shortages in key sectors. Guess who helps fill those gaps? Immigrants.
Right, they contribute a lot, actually.
Exactly. It's about looking past the fear-mongering and recognizing the economic and social contributions immigrants make.
It feels like it's always fear and misinformation driving these conversations,
Yeah.
rather than, actual facts.
Sadly, that's often the case. And it all ties into this broader issue of Eurocentrism in education, too. We're taught history from a very specific perspective, which, well, it leaves out a lot.
Yeah, it's like looking at a map where Europe's the center of the universe and everything else is just out there somewhere.
Exactly. We miss out on the richness of other cultures, their contributions, their perspectives. It skews our whole understanding of the world.
Right, right. Europe is important, sure, but it's not the only story.
Exactly. It's one part of a much bigger, interconnected, messy, beautiful world.
Okay, so after this deep dive, what's the takeaway for our listener? What should they keep in mind about Europe?
Simple. Europe is complicated. It's a continent of contradictions, a mix of history, culture, social realities. It's a tapestry, remember?
Right, that faded tapestry. But that's kind of the beauty of it too, right? It's not simple, it's layered.
Exactly. Embrace the complexity. Don't fall for easy narratives.
Question everything. Look deeper. Just like we did today.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, one final thought for our listener to ponder.
Yeah.
If all these lies about Europe persist, why is that? Who benefits from keeping these narratives alive?
Good question.
Something to think about. Europe might be complicated, but understanding why these misconceptions exist, that's a whole other layer of complexity to explore.
And that exploration, that's where real understanding begins.
Absolutely. So keep exploring, folks. Keep questioning. There's a whole world out there waiting to be discovered, beyond the easy answers and the simple stories.